Bo and Luke Nation, we're back at you with a great episode with Lacey Langford. She's the military money expert. And if you want to listen to her after the show, you're going to listen to her, the Military Money Show. That is her podcast. We are so excited to have Lacey with us today. You know what? I'm just going to read this directly. When it comes to Lacey, she helps people with their personal finances up to military standards and then some without all the yelling. So imagine drill sergeants yelling in your ear at boot camp. And Lacey's like, you know, we can probably accomplish a lot, but we don't have to yell, right? So, Lacey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Tell our listeners a little about yourself.
Well, I grew up in the military. My father was a military police officer. I joined the Air Force after high school, and that's where I met my husband. So I am a military brat, a veteran, and a military spouse. And along the way, I started to really get into personal finance and wanting to learn more and kind of take my knowledge I grew up with that my parents taught me and take it to the next level. I wanted to soup it up a little.
Mm-hmm.
And I started really looking into financial planning, financial counseling, and coaching. And so I've meshed my two worlds, my two loves, the military and money. And now that's what I do is I help people in the military community improve their personal finances.
I think that's awesome. Before we get into all that, I have to ask you. So, you grew up as an Army brat. What made you choose the Air Force?
It was my dad actually. So
Really?
funny, yes, funny story. The deal was my dad, both my parents were really awesome about always communicating about money, just in regular life to say, hey, you want that thing that's not in our budget. Yeah, we have money for it, but that's not how we've planned for it. So there was
Mm-hmm.
always this talk of you have to have a game plan. And we were always told if you don't go to college, you will, if you want to stay here, you're going to pay room and board.
Mm-hmm.
You will contribute. There's no free ride.
Wow.
And so after high school, I always struggled in high school. I wasn't a great student. It just wasn't my thing. My siblings all were aces and, lined up to go to college. And I started going to community college and I was like, you know what? I really just love to work. I want to work. And so I knew the day was coming. I dropped out of my classes and, I knew my dad was starting to notice. And so went to the Army recruiter and I did the ASVAB test with the Army
Mm-hmm.
and I was ready to join the Army. And then when the day came that I knew it was coming, my dad's like, I see that you're not going to school. He said, it's time to pay the piper. He's like, what are you going to do? And I said, actually, I'm going to join the Army. And I told him my whole plan. And I thought, oh man, he's just going to start like yelling at me.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, you know what? I'm really proud of you that you put the effort into this. You planned it, you prepared, you've done your research. He said, but the only thing I want you to do is just go talk to an Air Force recruiter. He said, the quality of life might be different for you, the difference between officer and enlisted,
Mm-hmm.
because I was going to enlist. And he said, I would just like you to know, to have something to compare to make a full informed decision. And I was like, all right. So I went to, and he wouldn't go with me. So he's like, no, he's like, you're an adult now. He's like, you do this on your own. And so I went and talked to the Air Force recruiter and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go in the Air Force.
That's fun. That's interesting. I love it. It's good stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember when I got into my very first joint assignment where it was Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines all together. Started learning more about the Air Force specifically because I didn't follow that route. I was Army. I went to the Army. I didn't talk to other recruiters. Um, and when I learned that, and I don't know if this still exists today, but when I learned that an Air Force member who goes to live on an Army base gets what's called a substandard housing allowance. I was like,
Yes.
"Oh my gosh, that kind of says it all." And that's what the Department of Defense thinks about its own forces. I was like,
What's a
"Man,
substandard housing allowance?
The Air Force living quarters are so much nicer than the Army that it's substandard to what they're used to.
yeah,
That's kind of funny.
I know.
isn't that funny?"
Yeah. Is the
Right? So
food
if you
better
take
too? Is like,
Yes,
yes,
chow halls are better. Hotels or billeting is what they call them. Billeting's way better in the Air Force. If you're ever going to travel, we work around Air Force bases, not Army posts.
Luke, it's fast. It's just a fascinating thing, right? Because the housing, it's getting a lot better today.
Yeah.
An Army when they privatized it and they brought in private construction companies and property management to actually build the new housing on Army bases, it's getting a lot better and it looks more like what you find in the community. But that obviously was not always the case.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so Army housing looked a lot different than Air Force base housing. So if an Air Force member ended up having to live on a non-Air Force base, then they get a substandard housing allowance that The Army person living on that base is not getting.
So you get more money.
Yes, more money. Allowance is a yeah, financial payment. Anyway.
Yes,
Okay, thanks,
That's kind
Lacey,
of
for sharing
hilarious.
that. It
it is.
is. Yeah, you could probably do a whole show just on all the differences between the between
I was
because they're not
I
all
was
the
going to say the
same.
gyms are better too in the Air Force. Like the Army people always come to the Air Force gyms because they're so much nicer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. Yep. Well, anyways, let's get into more about the money. From your perspective, I have my own, but I want yours. What is it? What is it about the military community uh, that attracted you to it in order to teach them about finance, about investing, about all the things that you talk about on your show? Um, what I mean, other than your military background, was there something that you saw missing? Was there a gap in this particular community that just fires you up and gives you the passion to do what you're doing?
Yes, it's kind of hard for me to separate it out because it really is like family to me. My
Mhm,
siblings are in, like, it's just, I'm the third generation to serve. But in the military, you are held to a higher standard, usually always, and your money is included in that. And
mhm,
so, part of receiving a security clearance, which is what most service members need to perform their job, not everybody, but a lot of them do. Part of that adjudication process to receive a security clearance, one of the factors is your finances. So, if you are in collections or a lot of debt, have unexplained money, that is a red flag to the Department of Defense to say, hey, you could be a national security risk. If
mhm,
you have $100,000 worth of debt and you can't pay it, you may be tempted to just take a photograph somewhere at your work and
mhm,
share that and get 100 grand and be done with your problem. And so you're held to this standard. So money is important for your job in the military. So I think it's really important for everyone to have foundations so they understand not only right now how to manage your money, but how the process evolves over time, how your career changes, your job changes, your life, having kids, marriage, divorce, all of these factors that are compiled on top of military life,
mhm.
I think is one of the reasons why I really want to help. The other part is a lot of people that join the military are the highest income earner, not only for their family, but their extended family.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of predatory behavior, not only from outside forces. So people that just want that steady paycheck, they want to give you a car with a super high interest rate or some type of payday loan. But there's also family members that prey on service members to say, hey, you
Mhm,
got that deployment money coming in. Need you to pay my cell phone bill. And part of that is culture too, with individuals on helping families. So there's all these factors and why money should be really important, or having foundations to understand good money management are important for the military community. And that's what I want to help with. Is just, it shouldn't be something that stresses you out all the time. It should
mhm.
be something that you have this control and confidence of.
Right.
And that way you're always somewhat protected, that you have this freedom to live your life, have your military career, and know that your money's on the right track.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's
Yeah,
great.
and so important. I mean, the educational system has failed people in the United States. And I think the military members are really hung out to dry. And what I mean by that is, we're teaching people algebra equations. We don't teach them basic financial literacy. And it's amazing how much a little bit of financial education can go such a long way.
Mhm,
Even just
Yeah.
knowing the basics of finance and how to look at, your assets versus liabilities. For example, me personally, a couple years, I went down this journey where I was like, okay, I want to learn this. And it was kind of daunting at first. And I watched maybe like a week of YouTube videos and read a small book. And it was life changing how much just a little bit of information really, really helped. So I think what you're doing is so needed, not only just in the military, but amongst all communities, because it's such a big gap.
Thank you. I love that. It's so true. A little bit of knowledge will go a long way and not only help you make informed decisions about yourself, but it also protects you. So you can
mhm,
call BS on people that are trying to maybe take advantage of you or a situation, to say, hey, no, that doesn't sound right. Or it at least gives you the confidence to say, hey, I don't understand what the hell's going on, that
mhm.
you could speak up and say that. Because a lot of times people, their education with money makes it so they don't speak up. That
Yeah.
you see this all the time with really rich celebrities, that all of a sudden now they're making a ton of money and they're nervous to ask what their attorney's talking about. They're nervous to ask what their accountant or their financial advisors are talking about. But if you have that little bit of knowledge, then it kind of gives you a little pep in your step to be like, no,
Yeah.
let's dig a little deeper on this.
Yeah, for sure. I would like to add some context around this. I pulled up the pay chart so that everybody listening, if you don't have an association with the military or an understanding, and if you do have an association with the military, or you have a child or a nephew or a friend or somebody that's 18, 19, 20 years old, and they have somebody in the service that's that age, this is what they're making. So somebody, say, coming out of high school or whatever, they first joined the military, they finish their basic training and their advanced training, so they're 5-6 months into their service. Luke, the gross pay at $1,785 a month
Wow.
per month. Break that down, you get paid twice a month, so you're right around $900 gross twice a month, right? So after taxes, maybe it's 750, right? That's not a lot of money.
No.
Now, you may live on base, so you got your housing provided for you, and you may have a what's called a meal card, so you're eating at the dining facility on base, and that doesn't cost you, right? But if you don't have the education like Lacey's talking about on how to manage even what that $1,500 a month that you have, it can go quick. It can
Yes.
go very, very, very fast, right? If you have no education around how do I manage this, how do I make it last, where should I put pieces of it, savings, and whatever the case might be. And Lacey, I'll give you a quick story. And I would love to know if you've heard stories like this too, with anybody giving you feedback on your show. I remember my first duty station. Now, this was when I was on active duty, 1994. So it's some time ago. And we had a young soldier living in the barracks. And back then, so back 1994, right? That 1785 was more like 1100 a month, right? It's super low. And this young soldier had no other bills, went out and bought a BMW.
Ooh.
Somehow they were able to, someone let them, and this is a different topic on predatory lending and that kind of stuff, but they got this BMW. After payment and insurance, unfortunately, as a young lady, she was broke by about the 10th day of the month, had no money left. That BMW sat in the barracks parking lot every single month from like the 10th to the 30th. There's no gas money. There's no money to put in the tank. And
Yeah.
literally, it's a good thing housing and food is provided, because there's no other money.
Oh yeah. That's one
Those,
thing, you always have a roof over your head and some food on the table.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I hear it all the time. But
Yep.
I say it's mostly either a Dodge Charger or a jacked up truck. Like those are the two. Like when I
Yeah.
start to see all the paperwork, I'm like, okay, so you prefer cars.
Yeah.
That's the way. But yes, that happens way too often. Is their eyes and their wants are bigger than their paycheck.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, that's also higher ranking people. I feel like they
Yeah.
then have the debt on top of that, but it's starting this cycle. But yeah, there's not this understanding of interest rates. There's not this understanding of how much you're going to get paid and the long-term strategy. So
Mhm.
I always tell people right now, it doesn't matter if you're in the military, whatever your job is, right now in your income earning years, you're earning money for two people, for yourself and your 80-year-old self. And if you are not spending less than you make and saving, you are not covering the roof for your
Uh-huh.
80-year-old self. You're not going to have the quality of life that you want at 80. And if you think it's hard, your quality of life isn't what you want right now, imagine how hard it's going to be to earn income at 80 years old, to get a job, to do those things. Very good possibility, but it's going to suck either way, finding that job or having it at 80. And so right now it's really important to have a long-term strategy for your future self. And a lot of
Mhm.
people miss that mark.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And Luke, cool story. This doesn't just apply to service members. And let me give you an example. My alma mater, University of Michigan, Ross School of Business. I did my MBA there. One of the professors that I had teaches this program that they bring into the business school. It's I forget the name of it, what they officially call it, but every year they bring in a group of NFL players
Mm,
for a 1 week, almost like a 1 week immersion, and they cover personal finance. They're covering investments, starting businesses, entrepreneurship, all of these types of things. And even in that group, now this is a group, they still might not have that personal finance knowledge, and they haven't been taught. No different than the soldier who, joined the Army or the Air Force or the Marine Corps, right?
Yeah.
Um, and this question that he asked, which I think is profound, he starts, what kind of car you want to buy, because these people these guys have money, right? They have more money than they've ever had in their life, and it's always the Lamborghini, the Ferrari. It's not the Charger or the Jack pickup truck. It's these exotic
Yeah.
sports cars. And then he starts asking questions. Do you know how much it costs to do an oil change in a Lamborghini? Right?
Oh, that is so true. If you have a more, I didn't realize that. I'm like, why is
Yeah.
your oil change so much? And it's because of
Yeah.
the type of car.
Right. So that kind of car, and like it's an attention grabber, right?
Mhm.
So everybody's thinking based upon their experience. Oh, go to Jiffy Lube, oil change $49 or something like that, right? He's like, nope, oil change in the Lamborghini $6,000,
Is it
right?
really? Oh,
Yeah,
I
because
didn't even know
they
that.
have to remove the engine. I mean, there's things they have to do to even get to the part to actually change the oil in the engine. Like it's a task, right? It's not the 15-minute oil change. It's big money. So it's it's the education around when you make one decision, there's other financial impacts to that decision down the road. So for people listening, the thing is, this doesn't just apply. I love that you're targeting or that you educating the military service members, but man, this is like relevant to all of us.
Yes.
Oh, it
I,
is.
I was just going to say that I've dealt with some stories in financial planning with professional athletes. And there was this one situation where somebody was telling me a story and they sat parents down and was like, hey, your son doesn't understand basic math. And so for
Mm.
me, that's like basic math. You wouldn't understand if an accountant is robbing you.
Yeah.
Um, and they were like, will that affect his draft status?
Mm.
And it's like, no, it won't affect his draft status, but it will make it so all of this hard work, somebody could take from him. Or so it's like,
Oh
hey,
yeah.
we got to get him up to speed to make sure that he has basic foundations to protect himself. It's
Mm-hmm.
not about like, oh, losing that money, or I mean, not getting it because of the work he did. It's like, all that hard work that you have sacrificed to get your child where they're at. It's like, these things are protection. It's just not like being big for your britches and making millions. No, it's to keep the millions you're making.
That's right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you just take that same attitude, um, apply it to whether you make 20,000 a year or 20 million a year. I mean, the mindset anyway, uh, should be the same.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
can't
Protect.
manage $1,000, you're not going to be able to manage $1 million. That's why lottery winners go broke.
Yeah,
That's right.
fascinating. Yeah, I love it. It's
Like an alarming amount of lottery winners go broke.
mm-hmm.
Yes, and you would think that that would be the one factor that would change things, but if you don't change, you're going to get the same results. So you have to do
That's
something
right.
different if you want, something better in life.
That's right. I do think that the educational system's really failed everybody in this. One big change for me came a few years ago, and I mean, I'm 38, right? So by no means did I learn this at a young age, and I've been doing it for a while. Like this is new to me. But one of the big aha moments I had was looking at wealth in a different way and just comparing my assets over liabilities and saying, okay, well, wealth is not a number that I need to attain. Like wealth does not mean $10 million. What wealth is it's $1 more that I'm getting in passive income than what my expenses are. Once that tips and now my passive income is even $1 more, I'm infinitely wealthy because now
Yes.
I have everything that I need and I don't have to do anything for it. That's not that tough to hit. Hitting $10 million is pretty, I mean, impossible for a large part of the population. Now, if you only live off of $5,000 a month, can you get 5,500 a month in passive income? I mean, honestly, that wouldn't take that long. If you make some good decisions, get out of debt, you could probably accomplish that in 5, 6 years.
I totally agree with you, Luke. I mean, growing up, I think a lot of people don't get exposure in school or at home, and having those basic concepts to understand like your net worth, what you have coming in, what you have going out, um, can give you that clear picture to say, wait a minute, like I'm in the negative here. But it's those little things that if you have money, it doesn't have to be, like you said, millions, but if you have money to withstand just crap that falls in your lap, because life's
Yes.
going to happen. It's not a question
Yeah.
of if, it's when and how much money it's going to cost you. And little things that shouldn't be a problem. If you have $0 or you're already in the negative, if it's like, hey, I need to have an oil change or it's actually going to damage my engine,
Yeah.
then that becomes a crisis, when for most people getting an oil change wouldn't be that big of a deal.
Hmm.
But it's those things that keep happening over and over again. If you just get in that cycles, for example, our air conditioning just went out and it's only like
Oh
5 years old,
no.
but we just bought the house, so of course, the warranty didn't transfer. And the guy came in and was basically like, there's no freon in your system. He's like, that's
Oh.
why it's not working. He's like, so there's a leak. We got to find the leak. And then we got to fill it up at $55 a pound for freon. And I was like, okay. So I'm just like, rack, I'm counting it
Yep.
up in my head. Like, this is
Mhm.
going up. But he came back. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be like $2,000. He comes in and he's like, it's $800. I was like, okay, that's
Not
still
bad.
sucks.
Yeah.
Like that's, $800 I would rather like go on a vacation with, but we have the $800 to pay that. And so we're not going to be miserable in our house, as the
Mhm.
temperature rises in North Carolina. We're able to fix that, versus if we didn't have $800 in the bank, that would have been a massive crisis for us. Or we would have no air. Plus we got to find $800.
Yeah.
Either we're going to go into debt, we're going to have to borrow it from somebody, or we're
Mhm.
just going to have to suck it up until the next pay period, which is what a lot of people do. So having, Luke, that little bit of difference that you're saying is huge, not only just to handle situations, but for your mindset, because
Mhm.
it's massively stressful as an individual, but it's amplified as a couple when you can't meet the needs that you have.
Oh, it's so true.
So
I
true.
tell them when my friends are getting into buying their first home, I tell them, I say, look, it's expensive. I say, you need to be comfortable, 10 grand in cash at any given time for your house during a year, and expect that to be depleted, because you have no idea. They could have come back with your air conditioning system and said that'll be $6,000.
Yes, which is
Next
what I
thing,
was ready
yeah.
for.
Next thing you know, your oven goes, then you're down, $7,000, and then something else happens. Who knows what else? 3 grand can slip through your fingers super fast in home ownership.
I'll tell you what else. Our septic tank leach field also started leaking like
There
the
we go.
same time. And I was like, of course, like this is just the way it works. So we've got to have that all dug up and fixed. So it's like the bill is still out. Like, I'll let you know how that turns out. But yeah, it just, when it rains, it pours, and it just, it becomes a crisis then if you're not have that little bit of extra.
Yeah, that's true. What advice here? Because I found because my credit rating used to not be great, I had to dig myself out of it, and I did. I found it was, and for listeners out there, if you're in the same position, it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. And it didn't take that much time. I think I was able to turn it all around and have like really like respectable credit that I was proud of, like within 12 months, within a year. It was totally able to do a 180. What advice do you give to people that are in that rut? And, it's obviously embarrassing to them, probably. What advice do you give them just to turn it around and dig out of it?
Well, I think it goes back to, was it you or both that said it about a little bit of knowledge can go a long way. I think that's really important when it comes to your credit. And so your credit score is basically your financial good name. If it's screwed, you're screwed. People don't want to loan you money. And if they do, it's going to be at a higher rate. It's going to cost you more money because you're a higher risk.
Yep.
So understanding how that whole process works, your credit score is made up of different components. The biggest component, over 35%, is on-time payments. So the most important part is pay your bills on time. That helps regenerate your credit to say, okay, hey, they're getting their crap together. They're paying their bills on time. So if it's like, oh, I might be late just because I'm busy and don't have time to write that check or go make that payment, don't do that. Make sure you're paying everything on time. Make it automatic. Set up automatic payments through your bank, or you can do it with a service. Another way is really cool. Experian. There's 3 credit bureaus: TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. And Experian has started a somewhat new program in the last year or two called Experian Boost. And they are taking good payment history and now applying it to your credit score when in the past it wouldn't. So
That's
for
sweet.
example, yes, if you normally your cell phone bill isn't reported to the credit bureaus, but if you go through Experian Boost, they will start reporting your on-time good payments to your cell phone bill. And if you miss one, they're not going to report that. So that's huge. So those start to improve your credit score. You could also do things like your rent for an apartment, maybe. There's different things. Streaming services now are allowing with
That's
Experian
cool.
Boost. And so those type of things, making your bills pay on time using something like Experian Boost and not taking out new credit is another component of building back up your credit score. Every time you apply for something new, that's a ding on your credit score. If you're shopping around mortgages within a certain like 90 days, that's, not the same. But if you're like every time going to Target or store and checking out and they're like, would you like the credit card? And you're like, yeah, I'd love that. That's impacting your credit every time you do it. So
Yep.
just don't do it. Maintain what you have, pay your bills on time, and start to rebuild it over time. It will get better.
I love it. I actually have my credit frozen on all three bureaus, which for listeners that don't know what that means, you just log in real quick. And it's awesome because nobody can run your credit or like steal your credit at any time because it's locked. So you have to unlock it with a PIN. But it's great because whenever you have to, like, if somebody says, do you want a credit card? Do you want to do this or that? It is a pain in the butt to go through and unlock that thing for like 24 hours. It's not that big of a deal. It takes me like 10 minutes, but I'm not going to take
It's
10
still
minutes. Yeah.
it's still not that easy. Like, it puts a barrier of resistance.
Yeah. It's a pause. It's a pause. And then I'm like, nah, I don't feel like doing that.
Yeah. You have time to
What?
think about it. Wait, I was going to add, if right now too, like if you want to rebuild your credit score, you can get a copy of your credit report for free every year from the bureaus at annualcreditreport.com. But because of the pandemic, the credit agencies are allowing you to get unlimited free copies of your credit report. So you're able to really stay on it this year and look at, get a clear picture of what it is right now. And then in 3 months, pull them again, see where you're at, see what you fixed. If you look through and see any errors, make sure you fix that because that could be impacting and dragging down your credit score. So use
That's right.
the pandemic. The one thing that we can take to our advantage is get more free credit reports.
That's right. And for folks, if you're here's a good lesson too, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lacey. You're the
Oh, I
expert here,
will.
so I
I
don't know
will.
why
I
I'm
will.
saying this,
Mhm.
but so if anybody is in collections, how that works is, let's say Verizon sends your debt to collections. You technically don't owe Verizon that debt anymore. It's been sold. So Verizon has been paid off. They sold that debt to XYZ debt collection company. You have to call them. Now, they bought your debt for pennies on the dollar, so they're getting profit. This is their business model to negotiate with you and get this paid off and squared away. So let's say it's $1,000. It is not unheard of for them to set up a payment plan for you for like $300 or $500. Cuts that in half. You get that done, start making a payment to it on the phone that day, and then make sure that they report that to the credit bureau. It's amazing how quickly that can be paid off. And within a short period of time you can start to see extreme jumps in your credit score, because those are like anchors that'll just drag you down. Lacey, please make sure I didn't lie to the listeners on that statement.
Yes, it can get really confusing if something gets sold in collections. So that basically it's charged off the company for, like in this example, Verizon's like, we're done trying to get that money. They sell it. And these third party collection agencies now take on that debt. Both of those then show on your credit report for a time. And so people
Yeah.
are like, wait a minute, I owe two people for the same thing. And those collection agencies can jack up the price. So they could say, hey, for fees, services, paperwork, whatever, your $1,000 debt is now $3,000.
Mhm.
And so you can negotiate to get those paid off, to say, hey, we know, if you had $1,000 debt, they probably only paid like $100 for it or whatever.
Easily. Yeah.
But if you do negotiate that, you have to be clear that that's not free money. That if you owed, let's say, $3,000, but only paid $1,000 back, that $2,000 is considered income and you'll be paying that on your taxes.
That's right.
So a lot of
That's right.
people like, oh, like I'm just going to get that like wiped away. Yeah, you might, but you need to understand that there's a tax consequence, and that's everything with money, that they're intertwined. And so something that a financial decision you make could have estate planning impacts. It could have tax impacts. So just understanding the whole picture is important.
Yeah. So let me ask a question then. Because Luke, I did not know that. I did not know that.
What? Really?
I
You
didn't
you learn
know.
something new every day.
Dude, I just
You
taught
do.
something to Bo Brabo. This is amazing.
Yeah. No, I didn't know that the collection company is buying the debt, and then that's the actual vendor understand they're wiping it off their books, but I didn't know they were then off out of the picture type of thing. So you get the collection, somebody gets the collection notice, right? From
Yep.
that third party who's bought the debt. And it says you have 30 days if you want to dispute this. You can dispute the collection, send in documents. So when you do that, or when someone takes that action and says, you know what, I dispute this, this is wrong, right? Are they going back to the vendor they bought that debt from and saying, here's all the evidence we have, this may not be a valid debt? Who's making the decision? Is it the third party collection agency, or does it go back to the vendor to actually judge this dispute?
Well, first of all, this is why you should check your credit report every 6 months to a year for
Mhm.
errors, because especially if you have a common name like John Smith,
Yeah.
Yeah.
some random John Smith stuff could be put on your credit report and you don't know it. So it's really important to make sure that what's on there is really you,
Mhm.
because if it gets sold off to collections, it's going to be a hot mess. So yes, you could go back to the original owner. So we'll keep with the same example. If it was
Yeah.
Verizon, you could go back to Verizon and say, hey, I never owed you this money, but now you're going to have to prove it.
Yeah.
That say, hey, I never signed this. So there's going to be some homework. And then I don't even know, that's out of my scope, how that would work between Verizon and who they sold it to.
Yeah.
But yes, basically it's going to be a hot mess. So stay
Yeah.
on top of it. But if that really was you that took out the Verizon bill and didn't pay it and it got sold off, yes, you are dealing with the collection agency at that point. You're not
Yeah.
dealing with Verizon anymore. And so you're negotiating with that third party that is now the owner. So some people will get mad at the original business, like, oh, I can't believe Verizon did this. You didn't pay the bill. So
Yeah.
Verizon sold it and now you got to deal with the other person. It's not that Verizon and this other company are in cahoots.
Mhm.
It's that it was a business deal. So your business deal, you didn't hold up your end. So they're trying to make a good decision and sell off the debt. And now this other person that has the time and that's their area of expertise is to negotiate that type of stuff. Now that's who you're dealing with.
Yeah. Look at
It's
it this way,
fascinating.
Bose. So for what these companies do is they buy portfolios that are
Mhm.
available usually through brokers. And it might be Verizon, US Cellular, Sprint, but and whoever. Just put a bunch of companies in there. They'll buy a portfolio of debt worth like $100 million for like 10 million.
Mhm.
And they'll now say, okay, companies, we're going to give you 10 million for this portfolio. Verizon, whatever, gets $10 million. It's not their game to chase debt or be a debt collector, so it works for them. They
Mhm.
get some money. Now you look at the collection agency, they have $100 million portfolio that they only paid 10% for. So if they collect 50% of that
Yeah.
principal value, they just made $40 million in profit.
Mhm.
It's a huge business. So I mean,
Yeah.
people need to understand that when they call these companies, it is their business model to help them as a business, right?
Yeah.
It is in their best interest to set up a plan for a reasonable amount. Like they're not just going to wipe it away, right?
Yeah.
But if they can show that they're making, I mean, that's an insane percentage amount to be making off of anything as a business.
Yeah.
I
I'll
think
tell.
understanding how that works helps,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they're professional negotiators. So know that when you walk in, like you have to bring your A game with negotiations
Oh
or you
yeah.
need to get help. And there's organizations in the military, they have financial readiness offices at most major installations that have financial counselors that will actually get on the phone and help you do that. But for other people, the NFCC or the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, they are a nonprofit and they have credit counselors that can also help in that negotiation and getting that sorted out. So you don't have to go into it not feeling confident, or just sometimes you want a helping hand to make sure you're getting the best deal and making the best financial decisions. So there is help out there.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Crazy. I'll tell you a crazy story and why I asked that question, and now it explains it, Luke, the way learning that. Um, True Green, and I'm happy to blast them because my gosh, I had my house in Virginia was on their monthly plan, right, for just the lawn fertilization, right. Moved out of the house, rented it out, so it's been a rental now for almost 3 years. Um, canceled the contract in 2018 for the monthly service, right? So it's just a monthly fee got charged to my credit card. And when I canceled it and I notified the credit card company, like, this payment's done, it's no longer authorized, canceled it. Full record of that contract being canceled. In the fall of 2019, True Green went to the house. Now, listen, I have tenants there, and it's managed by a property management company. And they overseeded and aerated the lawn, $198, sent me a bill. I said, yeah, I'm not paying that. I didn't order that service from you. I don't know why you went to the house. You didn't come to me. This is under property management. There's tenants in that house. They take care of the lawn, right? I fought it for almost 2 years, and they sent it to collection, one of these agencies, the third party. At least I'm thinking it's to them. I wrote all the stuff to dispute it, right? And then they came back with a letter, and they're like, "Hey, Mr. Bravo, yeah, True Green, all they have is the statement on what they billed you." I'm like, "Yeah, I have that too, right? Where's the proof that I ordered the service? Because I know I didn't, and there isn't any." Right?
Ooh.
Yeah. Tough decision. And I had this young guy on the phone, and I was like, look, I'm not going to argue with you. I understand your job and what you're trying to do, but this is what I'm telling you. As a consumer, how in the world can I prove to you that I'd never ordered something? I'm not going to call the company and say, "Hey, yeah, I don't want your seed and aeration. Can you send me a document that said I don't want it?"
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, and then what did he do, Luke? He said, "Well, I honestly," he goes, "I believe everything you're telling me. I can solve this for 50%. That's the lowest we can go." Right. So I said, "So if I pay you $99, it's done. It's over. You'll stop harassing me. You'll leave me alone." He's like, "Yeah, it'll be finished."
Yeah.
And so I just paid him on the phone. But I'm like, I felt for $99, I felt like I was a victim of this crazy collections game. So what do you see, if anything, for consumer protection? You know, 99 bucks, like the soldier. If things like that are happening to a young soldier, and that represents, 5% of their monthly income,
Yes.
even that can be a bill that they don't want to pay.
Well, thankfully, because I mean, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Military service members are preyed on all the time. So they actually have a service for that. It's
Do
consumer
they?
affairs. And
Nice.
so anytime a service member has a problem, they can contact their consumer affairs office,
Hmm.
and they work closely with JAG, especially in the local area, to say, hey, if this business is known to be taking advantage of service members and their spouses, now they're coming after people that was, the service member got all protected because it was so bad, and then they started going after military spouses to get them to sign up for agreements, and so the federal laws didn't apply to the spouse. It's like,
Yeah.
oh no, now we got you on the hook for the payday loan. We couldn't do that to your husband or your wife because they're
Yeah.
active duty. And so making sure that you go to these agencies like the NFCC for civilians or the military going to financial readiness, they have professionals that is their job, that they understand that world, they understand the terminology to go into a negotiation like that with you. And for consumer affairs, for them to call and say, hey, why are you saying that this lawn service was requested when it wasn't, and you're sending a bill? Like, show that proof. And if you can
Yeah.
show that proof, then that's fine. But if you don't show the proof, then we got a problem with your company, because it seems like this is a little shady business you're doing. So the military has an advantage there, where they have lawyers and
Yeah.
financial counselors and stuff like that can help out. But
That's great.
this is a good lesson in for other people, and I know that you did these things, but right off the bat is documentation to be like, boom, no, I actually wrote on my bill the day I canceled it, and so I have proof of the date I wrote that on there. We can bring in
Hmm.
like a pen expert if we need to, but I know that I wrote down this day that it was canceled. I know that the time frame that you're asking, we had a tenant, I was out of state or whatever. I have no phone record of calling you.
Hmm.
So it's unfortunate, but I have a feeling that was that individual business,
Yeah.
the franchise. I don't even know if it's franchise,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I don't know either.
that's how they were conducting business and probably trying to generate income, which probably got known in town that they're
Yeah.
trying to generate revenue in a shady way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boo.
It's great advice.
Yeah.
Boo.
Boo.
Yeah. Awesome. This has been fantastic, Lacey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun talking with you guys.
Yeah. So Luke, any parting thoughts or questions?
Lacey, you are awesome. You're doing a wonderful thing. For the listeners, just go out there, Google something about financial literacy, watch a YouTube video, start with 5-minute increments. It doesn't matter. 5 minutes will go such a long way. It'll change your mentality. I promise you it'll work. And tune in to Lacey Langford, the military money expert, because listening to things like this will get you in the right mindset and really help. Whether you're in the military or not, it's going to help. I promise.
Yep,
For
100%.
sure.
So
Thank you.
Lacey, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can listen to your show. And then when you're finished, you can take us out and just end with that's a wrap.
Okay. Well, you can find me at laceylangford.com for my podcast, The Military Money Show. You can find it anywhere podcasts are found, or at my website. And you can also check me out on YouTube, Lacey Langford, under the Military Money Expert. I do lots of videos on general personal finance information, but also geared towards the military community. And I really appreciate you guys having me on. I think that's a wrap.
Yay, good job. Tune in for a new episode every Thursday. You can subscribe to our email newsletter for information on upcoming guests, giveaways, and more.